Hi there, my name's Tracy James and I'm from Cotton and Crumbs Cakes based in the UK. Today in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make some simple leaves. Foliage is very big with wedding cakes at the moment. It's really lovely to sit amongst all the flowers that you make. So I thought some leaf tutorials and also going to show you how to make some little blackberries. So before we get started, I'm just going to talk through all of the materials and tools that you need to make these leaves and berries. So first of all, just the basics. We need a non-stick board for rolling out on, a petal pad or foam pad, just some polystyrene so that you can put your blackberries in when they're done. And in this pot we've got some basics, so we've got a sharp knife, paintbrush for the glue, a ball tool, a soft brush, and this is for colouring the leaves once they've had time to dry and once we've taped them together. So this is actually part of a makeup set. I find that the thick, soft brushes are really nice for dusting. I've also got a teaspoon, which I'll explain later, and some wire cutters, a rolling pin and some scissors. So just pop all that back in there. So we're also going to need some wires, and we just need a 20 gauge wire, and then I've got 3 28 gauge wires, so the higher the gauge the thinner the wire. So we've got those. We've also got a calyx cutter. This is just from FMM, and the size of it, in case you just want to check if you've got something like this at home, let's turn it over, might be a bit easier. The width is roughly 3 centimeters. We've also got some other cutters that we need. So we've got some a eucalyptus set of cutters, and this comes as a set of 3. We're actually only going to be using the 2 smaller ones, and these are from Valley Cutters, which you can buy through Cake Stuff or you can buy on Amazon or eBay. So we're not going to be using this one, but I just wanted you to know that they come as a set of 3, but we're just using the small 2. Again, sizes for them. The larger one of the 2 is 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters, and the smaller one is 2 by 2 centimeters. We've also got some just multi-purpose leaf cutters, and I really like the shape of these ones, and these are from a set by Valley Cutters again, and it's called multi-purpose leaf set. So that's Valley Cutters. But again, you don't need to go out and buy these cutters. If you've got something similar or you just want to adapt what you've got, size wise, the larger one, the length of it is roughly 4.5 centimeters by 2 centimeters, and then the small one is 2.5 centimeters by 1 centimeter. We've also got a veiner that we're using for the eucalyptus, and this is actually a eucalyptus veiner. They're quite difficult to get hold of in the UK. This one is from Alderval, and it's okay. It's the only one I could find in the UK, like I say. So you could use this one or you could use something similar. And again, the sizing on it is 4 centimeters by 5 centimeters. We've also got some florist tape, and this is a thin florist tape. Again, it's from Cake Stuff. We've got some colours that we're using. So we've got dark brown, shadow grey and eucalyptus, and these are all by Sugar Flare. These are the ones I mainly use for my leaves. some cocktail sticks, some edible glue, any brand is fine, some Trex, which is essential all the time, Trex or Crisco or any sort of vegetable shortening. And we've also got a couple of containers now. One's empty at the moment, the other one's got a very small amount of sugar syrup in it. And sugar syrup is just the same quantity of sugar and water that's been boiled and then cooled down. So we're also going to need a couple of things for finishing the leaves and berries. First of all, for the blackberries, we're going to be using perla dragées, and these are just matte black sugar balls. Again, you can get them from Cake Stuff or other places, and the brand is called Perla. We've got some confectioner's glaze varnish and some dusts. So the dusts that I'm going to be using, the first one is my favourite one, which is Bulrush by Squires. And don't be deceived because it's not brown at all. It's sort of like a ferny green colour. It's really nice. And then the other one is Sugar Flare Dusky Pink Petal Dust, just for a little touch of that as well. Okay, and then last of all, the paste that we're going to be using. So for the blackberries, we're going to be using some Massa Tocino paste. This is pitch black, and it's actually sugar paste or fondant, but it's quite firm, so it's just the right consistency for the blackberries. And some Squires Florist paste, which I'm going to show you which colours I use to make these two. This just comes in white, and it's from Squires, it's florist paste. So let's make a start on what we're going to do with the leaves. First thing we're going to do is colour up some of the paste, and we're going to cut some of the wires as well. So just put the thicker one aside for now. We'll start with the leaves, and we've got 3 of these 28 gauge wires, and we're going to cut them into 5 portions. They don't need to be exactly the same as each other. So just cut them about that length. I always hold them between my finger and thumb so they don't ping all over the table when you're cutting. And like I say, they don't all have to be exactly the same length as each other, so just roughly 5 of those. And then the colour of the paste, so I thought we could do a green colour for the multi-purpose leaves, and then a sort of bluey grey colour for the eucalyptus. So I've already coloured some of it up, but I thought I would just show you the combinations you need to achieve the sort of blue-grey colour and the sage green colour. I'll just put them onto here so that you can get a better sort of idea of the colours of those. So start with white, and always just mix a little bit of Trex through the paste before you start adding the colour, because this will just make it less crumbly and more pliable. And then in terms of this colour here, the sage, we've used some eucalyptus and a little bit of dark brown as well mixed in. Now these colours are really strong, so because we're only colouring up a very small amount of paste, we just want to be very, very liberal with it. Just grab a cloth, because this always happens to me, colour everywhere. Okay. And then these lids don't help either. Just grab another stick. So a tiny amount of eucalyptus to begin with, because like I say, it's very, very potent. And then a little touch of dark brown as well, so maybe a touch more of the brown than the eucalyptus. So always best to go in with a little bit to begin with and then mix it through, and then you can always decide what else you need to add to it, rather than getting out a load more white paste and adding to it to make it lighter again. So let's just give this a mix through, see how it looks. Okay, so it's going to need a little bit more of each. So let's go with a little bit more of this and some brown in there as well. The brown, really I use it quite a lot for colours because it just tends to tone the shades down a little bit, because the eucalyptus on its own is more like a duck egg blue, which is lovely on its own, but not for what we want, not for the leaves. Hopefully this will be enough now. Let's move these out of the way before I knock them. It's amazing sometimes what colours you can achieve just by mixing a couple of them together. Okay, that's getting there now. This one I mixed yesterday, so it's, when you start mixing it again, it does lighten up. You find when you've left it a while sitting there, it does go a little bit darker, so you can see that's pretty much the same, so that's fine. And then for this one, I've used eucalyptus again, and also some shadow grey with this one. I think colours are really important. They can, you know, really enhance a cake if you get nice tones with the colours. And if you're going for like really dark green leaves, then you can still actually get a really nice dark green using these colours, but you would just need a lot more of each. And the shadow grey on its own is really nice as well for leaves. So on its, without too much grey, you can see how sort of green it is. So I'm going to add some more of the grey into it. If you are doing darker colours, you might be better off putting a pair of food grade gloves on. Just save your fingernails and hands. Okay, so again, this is just dried slightly, so probably needs a little bit more grey into that, but that's what we end up with when you've finished. So let's just get rid of these as well out of the way now. Okay, so we're going to make a start with the leaves, and I'm going to show you what to do with them. So first thing we're going to do is the regular leaves, the multi-purpose ones. So I've got the two different sizes here. There is a set of 4, so you can use whichever sizes you like. And I'm going to start rolling out this paste. So there's lots of different ways that you can wire leaves, and there's the twiddly ball on the wire, there's boards with grooves in, so this is a slightly different way. It's the way I use because I like to get them done quite quickly, and I find you can get quite a lot done in one go. So I'm going to just roll it into a long thin sausage to begin with, and then use the rolling pin just to roll it that way to begin with, so that just gives it a bit of length, and then roll it out onto the board like that. Then I'm going to roll and press down as I'm working along the top of the paste. And what I'm trying to do is to get a thinner top part of the paste and a thicker bottom part and thicker middle here, so that when I cut the leaves out, I've got a thinner top section of leaf and a slightly thicker bottom section where the wire is going to go in. So that should help you if you've got a slightly thicker part at the base of the leaf. So thin at the top and thicker at the bottom. And for one sort of little sprig of leaves, I would usually do 5 leaves in total. So I'm going to do 2 larger, and then I'm going to do 3 smaller to sit at the top of the branch. So 3 of those. And then any other paste, obviously if you're making a lot of them, that you can just cut out a lot in one go and put them in a plastic envelope so they don't dry out too quick. But just for the purpose of the tutorial, we're only going to make 1 sprig of each. So with these, because the wires are going in here and the leaves are quite wispy at the bottom, I'm just going to give that a little trim at the base, because it will just give us a bit of a better foundation to put the wires into when we come to do that. So just a little trim here and there. Okay, so the next part is slightly fiddly, but once you get used to it, then I think this is the quickest way of doing the leaves, the wiring them. So you're going to bring the leaf down to the bottom of the board. So I'll just move that up a little bit. And the wire is going to just feed into the leaf up to about here. So when you push it into the leaf, you need to be pushing it on a slight upward gradient so that you're not digging the wire into the bottom part of the leaf so that it comes out of the bottom. So always slightly upwards, but your finger on top of the paste so that it doesn't break through the skin. So I'm just pushing that in a little bit so it's inside there and it's not sticking out of the back too much. So let me show you that again. So a slight upward gradient. You can feel the wire going in against your fingertip, but your finger's stopping it from breaking through the paste. Okay, so no wire coming through either side, and that's what you want, because if it starts coming through, then when you're trying to tape them the following day, it's near on impossible. So do the same with the bigger ones. So like I say, this is a 28 gauge wire. You could use a 30 if you wanted, which is slightly finer again. Okay, so that's into about there and not coming out either side. And then all I tend to do with these leaves now is to just score a line down the centre of them. So use a cocktail stick and just from the top there, just score a line down the middle, and that will just give you more of a leaf look. So do that on all 5 of them. And then you want to transfer them onto this foam pad for just softening down a little bit. If you find that the wire is coming out either side from the leaf, just make your paste a little bit thicker next time you roll it out. And then to finish these, we just want to use a large end of a ball tool, and you just literally lightly go down one side, making sure that your ball tool is half on the leaf and half on the foam pad, and then back up the other side. And that will just give you a little bit of shape. You can run down again if you need to, but not too many times, because the more you go over it with the ball tool, the frillier it's going to become, and we don't want that for these leaves. And then just pick that up and just pinch it either side around the base there. If you want to redraw the lining, if you've lost it a bit, then you can. And then you can just sort of shape them with your fingertips if you need to as well. So let me just do that on the others as well so you can see that again. So just on the right, up the left. Just make sure that it's got a nice thin edge to it. And then pinch it between your finger and your thumb at the base there. You want them to have a little bit of shape. And when you're making leaves like this, you always want to make them the day before you're going to do the taping and dusting. So at least one day before, just to give them full time to dry. You'll notice as well that when we put the wire into the leaf, we didn't use any glue. We don't need glue for these. They won't come out unless you pull them out. And the glue can sometimes just make it a little bit messy around the base, especially if you're using a veiner. So last one of these. So just left and right, and that will just give you a bit of shape and pinch around the base. And like I say, if you're not happy with the shape of it, you can always just sort of move it around a little bit before it dries. So they would be the regular leaves, and then the eucalyptus ones we'll move on to next. We've still got our wires for those. And so we're going to use this nice sort of bluey grey colour for these leaves. So again, I'll just cut a few out to show you what to do with them. And just, again, make your paste nice and pliable, and then just roll it between your hands. Give it a little roll over and then onto the board. Same as before, where you've got a thicker edge and then a thinner edge around the top and sides. Okay, and then we've got our two different sizes. So for this, for one sprig of eucalyptus, I like to use 4 of the smaller ones and then 4 of the slightly bigger ones. So I don't need to roll them all out. I will just do a couple to show you what to do with them. But when you're making them at home, you need 4 small and 4 large. You can obviously do different size combinations for your leaves. You don't have to stick to these. This is just an example of what I would normally make. I sometimes do combinations of 3, combinations of 5, just mix it up a little bit. So we're going to take our wires again, and again down to the base here, and just make sure you're pushing it slightly upwards as you come in at the bottom there. So this is the top part of the leaf. This takes a little bit of practice actually threading it in, but don't give up. Okay, and then this time we're going to be using a veiner before we use the ball tool with them. So this veiner has got one side where the groove sits inwards, and then the other side where the groove is slightly sticking outwards. So we want to put the leaves into the part where it's sinking in. So we just place that onto there. So make sure that the line is going to be coming through the centre, and then your other veiner on the top. And just give that a really good push down with your fingertips over the top, so it's going to create as much texture as possible. And then just carefully peel that out and onto the pad. So we'll do that with the other 3 as well. So you just need to be careful when you're peeling them out so that they're not pulling away from the wire that's in there. Same with the smaller ones. And this is something you can make these well in advance if you've got an order for them for a cake. Just store them in a box that's not airtight, just to keep the dust off them at room temperature. It's always good to have a little stash of leaves. So with these ones, pop that back on there. Again, we're just going to use a ball tool to go around the edges of them. And especially with eucalyptus, they're not very wavy leaves, they're quite flat. So you do need to be careful that you're not pushing too hard with the ball tool. And then again at the base of it, just give it a little pinch either side with your finger and thumb. And that's probably all I would do for those. I wouldn't press too hard. And if you do press too hard like that, just flatten it back down again, it'll be fine. And then pinch. Let's do the small ones the same. So when you've finished all the leaves that you're going to make, you might be making lots of leaves. Once you've finished them all, you need to let them completely dry overnight. They don't need to be shaped, but they do need to be fully dry before you can continue to the next stage. So I have already made some leaves so that I can now move on to the next stage and show you what to do next with them. So these are some that have dried since last night, and they're completely dry on the wires now. So the next stage would be to tape the leaves together before we dust them. So I'm just going to take these off here to show you what to do. So I've got my pile of eucalyptus ones. And there's different types of eucalyptus. You could use even just small rose petal cutters can make nice eucalyptus as well, the more sort of just simple round ones. So you really can improvise with what cutters you've got at home. Move that over there. So we need our tape now for this. And let me just check the width of this tape, because you can buy wider ones, but this is a good size for leaves. So it's roughly about 6 millimeters in width. I'm just gonna cut some of this off and start taping these together. So I'm going to show you the regular leaves first of all, and this tape, you need to pull it to stretch it. Makes it more pliable apparently, more sticky. And I'm just going to line up on the board how we're going to tape them together. So you want your 3 smaller ones first of all at the top, and then the 2 larger ones below. So you've got one that's going to be straight, and then these 2 are going to sit opposite those a little bit lower down. So you need to bend the wire slightly at that angle, so it sits like that. So it's quite far down before you bring in this second leaf, and then the third leaf you bend it the opposite way, and that's going to sit a little bit lower down at that sort of angle. And then you've got your 2 larger ones, and again they just need a little bit of bending. So when you bend, you just bend slightly out from where it's going into the bottom of the leaf, and then that would sit around here, and then this one a little bit lower down. Now sometimes students in class, I try and explain to them that when you're taping these leaves together, if you go too far out here and tape them without a gap there, they're going to sit like this. So you've got to come down quite far before you incorporate those side leaves in. So we're going to start wrapping the leaves together now. So I'm going to pick up the first two and I'm just going to hold that one on the side there. And you can see that's probably about 1 inch down before I've brought in the side leaf. And then I'm going to hold them with my finger and thumb there, and I'm going to start wrapping this tape around the wires a bit lower down because I can slide the tape back up to begin with. So I'm going to hold it, and I'm just going to hold it there with my thumb and finger, and I'm going to wrap this around so that the tape sticks to itself. Now you'll need to sort of pinch it back in around the top there. And once you've been round a couple of times, once it's stuck to itself, then it's okay. It should be okay to work with from there. And then I'm just going to slide that up to where this side leaf begins. So I've been round a couple of times. Always, with the tape, always pull it down and around, down and around. If you keep going around the same area, it's just going to become too thick. So now I'm going to bring in this other leaf on the opposite side, about there, and then I'm going to continue to tape around. So now we've got 3 leaves that are attached together. So I'm just going to open that out a little bit and just pinch that in so it's nice and tight in there. Okay, and then I'm just going to come down and around. So I'm just pulling the wire around and easing this tape down and around at the same time. And then I just want to see where this leaf's going to sit. So that's probably about the right length because you need quite a gap there for that to sit underneath. So let's just continue to tape that one in now. So come round a couple more times with the tape and then bring in the opposite one a little bit lower down. So it's just slightly off from each other. You can have them completely opposite each other if you prefer. It's the same technique. And then I'm just going to keep bringing that tape all the way down to the base. And I usually leave them quite long just in case I need it to fit in the cake where it's got a lot more length to it. Tear that tape off. And then I usually just use the wire cutters and just cut on a slight angle so it's slightly sharper at the end point. And then you can sort of play around with the leaves and just have them sit in whatever direction you want them to. And then I'm going to now show you the eucalyptus ones before we start dusting the leaves. And because sometimes the white tape is a little bit too prominent, so you just want to blend that in a little bit more and give the leaves a little bit more of a dimension. So again, we want tape for this, same tape. If you've torn it off, just give it a little snip on the end just so that it's nice and neat. Now these ones, we're going to be completely opposite each other, these leaves, and then we're going to be swapping the shape for the next 2 leaves and then swapping the shape again. So I'll show you what I mean when we come to tape them together. So the top 2, this time we're going to bend the wire from where the leaf ends. So we're going to bend it down like that. And then we're going to bend the other one the opposite way. And they're going to sit opposite each other like that. So you might just want to bend them up a little bit like this at the top. And then you want to start with the tape. Again, you can start a little bit lower down and just get that going. So you're just holding it while you're pulling it down and around as tightly as you can. And then you can slide that tape back up to the top, because you just couldn't do that to begin with. Your fingers are in the way. So, and then you want to continue to ravel the tape round a little bit. And then we're going to put another 2 smaller ones opposite each other, but they will be sitting the opposite to these 2. So get your leaves and bend them outwards again, and then you just need to sit them about here and here. Just bring the tape open again. So there's not as much of a gap this time as there was for the other leaves. They're a little bit more bunched together, especially around the top of the leaves. And then just continue to twist down and around a little bit more. So if they've now manoeuvred themselves round, just bend the wires around a little bit. So we want these 2 to be sat that way, and then those 2 to be sat that way, and then the next 2 will go back to the same angle as those top 2. So we're going to come down a little bit further now, because these ones are bigger, so they need a bit more room. So we'll give those a little bend for 2 of those. Again, they're going to sit directly opposite each other, and just have a look where that's going to sit. Okay, that's fine. And then the other one, the opposite side there. Now we can continue down with the tape. And then, so these ones should be sitting opposite to those 2 there. And then finally, the last 2. So they will sit again opposite the ones you did before. It's up to you how much gap you put in between them. Again, I do different gaps, so sometimes I'll do them where they're really close together, really bunched together, and then other times I'll do them where they're a little bit more sort of, they've got more gaps and more space between them. So it just depends on the design, but again, the technique is the same. It's just adjusting it to how you want them to look. So these are just a little bit more 3D than the other leaves. So twist all the way to the base again, and you can see there we've got smaller ones and then larger ones below. So the next thing we're going to move on to is the dusting. Right, so now we're going to dust both of these and just bring them to life a little bit more. So we'll start with the regular leaves first of all, and you just need a couple of bits of kitchen towel are a good idea, just so you don't get dust on your boards, because it can be a bit of a pain to wipe it off as well. So I'm just going to use some of this one that I mentioned earlier. It's called Bulrush, and I'm going to take some out and put it onto the kitchen towel first of all. So you never want to go straight from pot to leaf, because it can be quite strong to begin with. So I'm just going to take my soft brush, and then I'm going to put some of this dust onto the kitchen towel, and I'm actually going to brush most of it back off again, because these brushes do keep quite a lot of colour in them. So it's important to just brush most of it back off. If you wanted a really strong colour, then you don't need to brush quite as much off, but these leaves are quite pale, so I don't want to go very dark with the bits in between. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just going to brush up and just check what the colour is like on there, and that's fine for what I want. So I'm just brush it on the bottom first, and then I'm just going to brush up through the centre here and onto that wire as well, just to blend that in onto there. And then if you want to, you can just brush a little bit on the base of the leaves, so it's just coming out from the base of the leaf, so it's slightly darker. And then again, so I've not been back to the dust at all for any more dust. It's usually per sprig of leaves that this is usually just about enough. So again, just brush from the base out a little bit. And that just blends in. Make sure you get these little side wires coloured up as well, so there's none of them are left white. And then I'm just going to turn that over and do the back of it as well. So I'm just going to add a little bit more colour to go in at the back as well. So you just got to be really careful with your brushing that you're not squashing the leaves too much. And come all the way down here as well. Make sure you do all the sides, all the bits in between. Okay, so that just gives you I think just a little bit more tone to the leaves, and that's all I do. I don't tend to steam them or anything, they don't really need it. You can always use just a dry brush to brush off any excess powder, but I don't really find it needs it too much. So I'm going to do the same with the eucalyptus. I'm still going to use the same colour to begin with. So again, just brush off. These are a little bit more awkward to brush because the leaves are everywhere. So I'm going to start at the base again. Impossible not to get it all over your fingers. And then I'm just going to work in between the gaps to get the stalk coloured up. So just lightly. Just be careful if you can so that it's not going on too much of the leaf. So you're just going to need to move it around a little bit and just get in all the little sections. You can always bend the leaves out a little bit if you need to get in a little bit more. And then all the way down here as well. And then I'm just going to do a little bit on the base of the leaves as well. So just from the base of the leaf coming out. And again, I've not gone in with any more colour because I don't want to ruin what I've done. And it can easily, dusting can easily go wrong. It's something you've just got to do very, very lightly and build it up slowly. I'm then just going to add a little bit of the dusky pink to the top edges of the leaves as well. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit in on top of some of this green. And then just blend that in a little bit. So we've just got a little bit of a pink tone running through it. And then again, I'm just going to brush most of that back off again. And then just very, very lightly go over the edges of some of the leaves. You must have a really soft brush for this or else it will leave brush marks on the paste, which is not a nice look. So the softer the better. So I think less is more really with this. You don't need to go in too strong, but it just gives you a little tiny touch of it on the edges of the leaves. Sometimes when you're handling the bottoms of them, they tend to take the colour off a little bit sometimes, but you're not really going to see that anyway once it's on the cake. So let's just take these out of the way now. So these are our finished leaves, and you can see that just a little bit of dust just brings them to life a little bit more, I think. So now that we've finished these, we're going to move on to the blackberries, which look nice with the foliage as well. So I'm just going to put these into the foam. It's a really quick, simple way of making leaves. Not too complicated. So we're moving on to the blackberries now, and the first thing we're going to do is use this 20 gauge wire. So this one's thicker, because it's quite a lot of weight to sit on the wire. So I'm just going to cut it in half and then just get rid of that half, and then the other half I'm going to cut in half again, and these are going to be our 2 Blackberry wires. Now, first thing you want to do is to just take the wire between the cutters and just bend it around the wire so that you just form a little hook on the end there like that. So we'll do that again. So just hold it, you don't want to snip it, but just hold it tight enough so you can use your thumb or your finger to bend it around on there. So you'll end up with just a little hook at the top, and that will just help to hold the wire in the black paste. So we'll put those to one side for a second, and then I'm just going to get the black paste out. So as I was saying earlier, this is masa paste, and it's already pre-coloured black, so makes your life a little bit easier. We're going to make a couple of blackberries, and it's quite deceiving how small this ball of paste needs to be, because by the time you've added all the black sugar balls on the top, it's going to grow considerably. So you don't want to make your paste too big to begin with, or else your blackberries will probably look like they've been on steroids by the time you've finished with them. So I'm just going to roll one of these out to show you roughly the size of it. So that's probably about the size you want, and just roll it lengthways a little bit, just so that it's a little bit more like a jelly bean shape. And then I'll do that again. And the good thing with these is they don't all need to be exactly the same size. So you can do some really small ones to sit aside the bigger ones, because that's just a bit more natural looking as well. So that one's slightly smaller, which is absolutely fine. Keep your paste in the bag when you're not using it again, and then we'll just get rid of that to one side. Now, to stick the balls on, this is the tricky part. So that's why I mentioned briefly earlier that I'd made some sugar syrup, which is just a very tiny amount, just half a teaspoon's worth in the bottom of this tub. And I'll just mention again, sugar syrup is just sugar and water, the same quantities of each, brought to the boil in a saucepan and then cooled down. It's what most cake makers use for brushing onto their cakes. So you can always just pinch a little bit out from what you're using for this. And the reason I'm using sugar syrup mixed with the glue is because the glue on its own doesn't always hold the balls in place. Whereas if you use a bit of sugar syrup, it's a lot stickier. You'll know yourself if you've ever spilt some on the worktop, it goes very, very sticky. So I figured that this would help to keep them in place. So that's why we've got the teaspoon, and I'm just going to take a teaspoon of glue, well, half a teaspoon of glue, and then I'm just going to mix that in with the sugar syrup to make our little glue texture. So we're only making a couple, so hence why I've hardly got any in here. We don't need very much of that. And then I'm just going to drop one of those into the mixture and just give it a little move around. You can use the teaspoon if you don't want to get your fingers full of glue at this stage. And you just want enough just so that it's coating the paste. Another thing that you would need is a separate tub, a dry tub, and just put in some of your sugar balls. Now, you only want to put enough in for roughly just over one blackberry. If you put loads in and then the glue gets mixed into it every time, they start clumping together and they're no good to anybody. So I'm just putting a few in at a time. And then we also need a little bit of kitchen towel for this as well to help us. So I'm just going to take that out of there and then into where the balls are. And then I'm just going to give it a little shake around and try and coat at least half of it or some of it to begin with. Just give it a little move around in there. And some of them will stick, some won't, but that's what this next part's for. So I'm going to pour that out onto there, and then I'm just going to use the kitchen towel, because I find if you do it with your fingertips, the balls just keep pulling off the paste. So if you just use your fingertips and you're just squeezing the balls almost into the paste a little, so they're just moulding into it, and then move it around, and then try and get some on the back as well. This is a much easier way than rolling all the little balls by hand. Life's too short for that. And when the glue starts to dry slightly, it's easier to stick them on. So bear with it. If you think, oh God, they're not sticking, don't worry, they will do. So just give it a little roll around. It's important again to have a cloth for your hands to keep drying, because if they've got glue on them, you just end up pulling the balls back off again. And you can reshape this as well, so don't worry if the shape gets a little bit all out of sync. You can redo that. So you see how that was pulling my fingers off, so I'm just going to give them a little wipe to get some of the glue off. Just give them a little dry. Okay, and then I'm just going to give this a little mould, and they're already starting to stick quite nicely. And then you're always going to have some gaps, so that's when you just want to manually stick them on with your fingers. If you're buying these sugar balls, they do need to be the matte ones, because they do black ones that are shiny, and what happens is the shine comes off as soon as they touch the glue, and then they look grey rather than black. And the good thing with these, they all come in slightly different sizes of ball, so it just makes it look more realistic, I think. So it's just being gentle with it, making sure there's no glue on your fingertips, and then just adding in where the gaps are. You can sort of manoeuvre them round a little bit, like that. And blackberries are not always exactly round or an even shape, so even if you've got a few that are kind of fallen off, looks like the birds have been at them, it's, you know, you can still use them. Okay, so just get rid of the excess balls. And I find the easiest thing to do with these, just going to disregard that one, we don't need that one. So just give it a little roll around, make sure everything's sticking. If anything comes off, just stick it back on again, okay? So just make sure that it's completely coated. And then you need to put the wire in next. So just take your hook end of your wire and then just dip it in some glue. Decide what the top of the blackberry is going to be, and then at the base of it, you just need to push that in, give it a little wiggle around, and then just stick all of these balls back around the sides if any of them have come off. Try and make sure that your sticks in fairly even, and then you want to just leave the blackberry overnight to dry, so then you can handle it without worrying about things falling off. I'd say pretty much 9 times out of 10, once it's dried overnight, nothing falls off it. It's not a case of hearing the balls keep dropping all the time and that. They don't. Once they've dried, it's absolutely fine to work on the next stage of it. So, and also leave it flat on something to dry. So don't have it standing up in something, because the weight of it will pull the whole thing through the wire. It won't be able to support it. So it won't flatten too much. It should be fine just to leave it flat on a flat surface to dry overnight. So I've got a couple that I made yesterday. So let's move that out of the way. And I'm just going to show you how to finish them off now. So the next stage is going to be to varnish the blackberries. So these are the ones that I did last night, and they can now be stood upright because they've fully dried on the wires. So first thing I'm going to do is to varnish it. So I've got a little tub of varnish here, and these ones these are from Cake Stuff as well, and these ones come with a little brush inside, which is really handy because this stuff can really wreck your brushes. So if you've got nice brushes, you don't want to really use that, so use the brush that's in there and then just give that a little coating all over, and that will just give them a bit more shine and make them a little bit more realistic. And just brush that all over and go in between where the balls are as well, so you don't need to brush every ball individually, you can literally just layer it on. And that will just give you a lovely shine, and that shine won't go, it will stay there now. And this is completely edible, this varnish. Okay, so that's just got a little coat on there. I'm going to do the same with the other one. So you can see the difference between the two. So again, and you could make them with pink and red balls if you wanted to make raspberries instead of blackberries. You could maybe mix in a few green or purple ones with these black ones, the ones that have not quite fully ripened yet. So you can just have a little play around with them, but they are really lovely and they look really nice with flowers and leaves alike. Okay, that's all done. So I'm just going to let them dry for a second while I make just a couple of little calyxes to go on the bottom of them. So for this we're going to need some green paste, and we can just use what we had left over from the leaves earlier. We don't need to make any more, we can just use this one so that it all just matches if you were going to have it on the same cake. So we're just going to take a little bit of this green paste and roll it out onto the board so that we can cut a couple of little calyxes out. Just enough paste for the two of those. So with these cutters, again, just make sure that this paste isn't stuck to the board before you start cutting, and then just press down, and I find it helps to just use your fingers directly over the top so you're getting all areas of it cut, because it's got quite a lot of detail in there. And then if you leave it in the cutter, just wipe over the edges before you push it out, and just use the ball tool just to push that through. Same again, so fingers all over top, and then just run over the edges so it's nice and neat. And then we just want to use the ball tool just to thin over the edges slightly, so you can use the bigger end and just work back and forth. Just sort of makes it a little bit longer and a little bit thinner, a little bit in the middle there, and it kind of just curves up the sides of it as well. Okay, and then we just want a little touch of glue all over these. So a tiny bit of glue, and just dab that on the edges. You're probably not going to need a lot because it's got the varnish still sticky on there. So just little bits in the middle and over each of the 5 little pointy parts as well. And then take your blackberry, and then you just want to feed that through the base of it there, and just use your finger and your thumb just to sort of feed it upwards to the base, and then you can turn it over while you just give it a little stick down here and there. Okay, and then I'll do the same with the other one. So just pick that up onto your fingertips again, and then feed that through the centre, and then just feed that upwards into there. So again, just turn it over, so it does need to be fully dry before you do that part. Just make sure they're all sticking around the sides. To finish off, you can just use a little bit of dust to dust the wires so that they're not white. So let's grab a bit of dust that we were using earlier, and then just dust the wires so they just blend in a little bit more colour-wise with the calyx at the top. And then again with this one. Okay, so that's it with our 2 blackberries that go with our leaves. They're quite effective, pretty simple to make, but just really nice little accompaniments for your flowers and your leaves on your cakes. So this is the end of this tutorial now. So we'll just gather up all our little pieces together, and so we've just got our little eucalyptus leaves, our regular leaves, and our little blackberries together. Just nice little bits of foliage to go in between your flowers. So this is the end of the tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's given you some ideas for your own foliage. Give it a go, and don't forget to practice, and please send us pictures of anything you've made. We really love to see what you've done with the tutorial. So this is the end of it now, and I hope that you've really enjoyed it. If you'd like to look at any of our other tutorials, the details are on our website at cottonandcrumbs.co.uk. Thanks for watching.